When the NBA was formed in 1946, there were originally 11 teams. Since then, throughout the years, there have been multiple expansions to finally get to 30 teams at the moment. However, rumors are getting louder about adding another 2 teams to the league. So let's break down what actually happens when a new team enters, how do they get players, and all the effects that this has on the association. What up everybody, my name is Stefan and this is Heat Check. Let's get into it. First of all, let's see how expansion rosters are constructed. When a new team enters the league, they get to pick a player from the other NBA teams. This is called an expansion draft. But of course, since everyone would love to pick LeBron, KD, Curry, Harden, and similar superstars, every team gets to protect a certain number of players. With the arrival of the Charlotte Bobcats in 2004, that number was 8. Though there may be some changes, that was the system used 17 years ago. As you'd expect, the so-called unprotected players aren't especially good. Yet, there have been situations in which expansion teams got their hands on guys like Gerald Wallace, the Bobcats in 04, B.J. Armstrong, Raptors in 95, and Rick Mahorn, Timberwolves in 89. What's ironic is that both Armstrong and Mahorn refused to report and were subsequently traded away. The Mahorn situation was especially emotional. The bruising big guy had just become a champion with the Pistons, yet because of their depth, Detroit left him unprotected and he was therefore selected, like I said, by Minnesota. It was a decision that puts tears on his face to this day.
It hurts even talking about it a little bit because, I wanted to be that person to protect it. But, excuse me.
And we cannot talk about expansion drafts without mentioning this trivia. In 1988, the Lakers sent a second-round pick to the Heat, who were the new team entering the league back then, in an agreement that Miami wouldn't select one of the greatest players of all time, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, in that year's expansion draft. Los Angeles kinda forgot to protect the center, focusing their attention on some younger players. But as history would tell us, it all ended good for the team in Hollywood. Now, back to the rules. Expansion teams also have picks in the actual NBA draft. However, there are no fixed criteria as to where they select in their first seasons in the league. The Vancouver Grizzlies and Toronto Raptors selected numbers 6 and 7 respectively in 1995, while the Bobcats had the 4th selection, though they traded up to number 2, getting Emeka Okafor. These picks were not awarded in the lottery, but were given out by then Commissioner David Stern. When it comes to the salary cap issue, the league places a limit on how much expansion teams can spend. This is done to protect the rest of the NBA from being outbid easily in the fight for free agents. In its first season, an expansion team can use only 66% of the cap, while the figure rises to 80% in year 2. In the third season, the full salary cap is available. And having understood the actual mechanics of forming an expansion roster, we can now look at why owners would love to see this happen soon, as well as the pros and cons of yet another expansion. The main reason why current owners would support expansion is of course money. According to Brian Windhorst, the price tag is around $2.5 billion each for 2 expansion teams in the near future. Unlike other major revenue streams such as TV and ticket money, expansion fees are not split with the players. That could mean about $160 million per team, a boost that could wipe out the massive debt load that's piling up for owners, especially during COVID. Now, for the most serious candidates that have been mentioned in terms of expansion even before the start of the pandemic, and especially since the outbreak. They are Seattle and Las Vegas. Seattle is an obvious choice, especially considering the rich basketball history that it already has, also a loyal and supportive fan base, and the size of the city as well. Even Silver himself has mentioned that.
What U.S. city would you like to see host an NBA team next?
Again, I try to be a bit politic here. There are a bunch of cities out there that would be fantastic hosts, but I'm going to say Seattle because I was in this league while Seattle still had a team, and we were all sad to see, and I know I speak for David as well, and it still remains a great market. There's no doubt when we do turn back to expansion, which we invariably will one day, that Seattle will be at the top of the list.
When it comes to Vegas, let's just say that it was not a coincidence that the league had its All-Star weekend there in 2007. Also, in December of last year, the mayor of Las Vegas said she'd spoken with Silver and they both agreed that this would be a nice fit. Cities such as San Diego, Louisville, Kansas City, and Pittsburgh must be mentioned in this discussion as well. As it pertains to the effects, a couple of things. A new market adds very little value to the NBA from a TV product standpoint, since the ratings are primarily driven by big market franchises and the playoffs. However, since national TV revenue is shared evenly among all teams, the new market gets part of the pie every other team would be entitled to, even without creating more money. Other revenue streams are impacted similarly, but TV is what's most important. It's like angel investors buying stock in the NBA as a whole. While it infuses much needed money into the business right away, the long-term earnings from any previous investors are spread out. Another negative aspect is the dilution potential. In simple terms, more teams end up sharing the same amount of talent, so the quality of the teams and games is watered down. There's a reason why many fans consider the period from 1984 to 1993 to be the golden era of basketball. Fewer teams, packed rosters, no teams such as the Toronto Raptors, then Vancouver Grizzlies, and Charlotte Bobcats. Expansion teams tend to be on the receiving end of blowouts by contenders. For example, the 95-96 Bulls won 72 games, but did so at a point in which 6 new teams had been added to the league within the previous 7 seasons. That's not to discredit Chicago and Jordan, but still something that needs to be pointed out when talking about this topic. Now for the balance issue. Simply put, the NBA, which currently has 30 teams, will likely need 2 franchises. However, things get a little tricky. The current system sees each team play against their divisional opponents 4 times, their non-conference opponents twice, and then splits up the remainder of their conference opponents so that they play 6 of them 4 times and the remaining 4 3 times. That math is no longer valid if there are 2 more teams involved. But honestly, divisions themselves are a complete non-factor in today's NBA, and they should be removed, as should conferences, for a nice 1 through 16 playoff race. Maybe adding 2 more teams can even be a catalyst to that rather than a problem in the playing system. So there you have it. While expansion may, at first glance, seem complex, I hope that this video helped you understand the process and its effects in simpler terms. As we've seen here, while there are some potential negative effects for fans, especially with regards to dilution, most, especially those in Seattle, Las Vegas, and other cities we mentioned, hope that there will be, as they say, light at the end of the tunnel. Considering the current talent pool is very rich, even those opposing expansion due to the dilution aspect would have a hard time to disagree with the league should it decide to admit new teams in the future. At the end, let's just point out it's safe to say that the league has come a long way since its formation in 1946 with just 11 teams. Let me know what do you think about this. Would you like to see the Sonics back in the NBA? I know for sure I would. And if you learned something new about how expansion teams are formed, make sure to leave a like, it helps a lot, and subscribe if you haven't. Talk to you in the next one, peace out. Another one. I'm definitely not gonna get protected in the expansion draft. Peace.